This morning, as we prepare for the message, we're going to turn to Matthew. We're going to be in the 27th chapter. That's Matthew 27. And I'm going to be reading verses 32 through 37. And as they came out, they found a man of Cyrene, Simon by name. Him they compelled to bear the cross. And when they were coming to a place called Golgotha, that is to say, a place of a skull, they gave him vinegar to drink mingled with gall. And when he had tasted thereof, he would not drink. And they crucified him and parted his garments, casting lots. That is, that it might be fulfilled, which was spoken by the prophet. They parted my garments among them, and upon my vesture did they cast lots. And sitting down, they watched him there, and set up over his head his accusation written, "This is Jesus, the King of the Jews." May God bless that reading.
My name is Simon. I've come to share a story that's shaking me to my very core. There's a story that changed my life. There's a story that changed my family's life. I still hear the crowd shouting, "You are not my king. You are no son of God." I still hear their voices filled with rage, and anger filled their eyes. You see, I come from Cyrene. Cyrene is about 738 miles from Jerusalem, and my journey takes me 1 month to arrive in Jerusalem. There are 3 pilgrim feasts that every Jew must follow to celebrate. One of those is the Passover. 7 weeks after that would be the Feast of Weeks, and then in the fall we like to celebrate the Feast of the Tabernacles, and we think these are important feasts. But see, the problem is that some of us are so scattered that we're not able to go to Jerusalem as much as we want to, but sometimes we try to make it at least once. I remember growing up in Cyrene and hearing the stories about Jerusalem and the celebration of the Passover and the beautiful buildings that existed in Jerusalem. And I was anticipating that one special day when I can finally make it a reality for myself to go to Jerusalem. And I chose the grandest celebration of all, and that was the Passover. I saved my money, and when I finally received or saved up enough money to go to Jerusalem, I brought my 2 young sons, Rufus and Alexander, with me. We arrived the day before the Passover, and all of a sudden I noticed something was different about the crowd. It was not the kind of crowd that I grew up hearing about in Cyrene. Cyrene, of course, is located in North Africa, in what probably you know as Libya. I saw hatred. It was not so much a celebration the way that I used to hear it. I saw people who were so angry, so vicious. I stood on the side of the road, and my 2 young sons were with me, and I asked the host, I said, "What's going on?" He told me about this man named Jesus. I had heard bits and pieces about Jesus, but I didn't realize that the things that I was hearing made the crowd this way. Suddenly in the distance down the street, I noticed the crowd was lined up on both sides of the street. And I looked and I saw a man carrying this big wooden instrument. I tapped my host on the shoulder and I said, "Who is that?" He said, "That's Jesus." And I said, "What's he carrying?" He said, "He's carrying a cross because he's been sentenced to die." He told me about all the things that had happened in the trials of the Sanhedrin and the trials before Pilate. And I marveled at this man that they had condemned to crucify, this man that claimed to be the Son of God, and this man who was claimed to be the King of the Jews. I saw the crowd with their fists raised in the air, pumping their fists back and forth, continuing to shout, "Crucify him! Crucify him! Crucify him!" And as he approached closer, I noticed his face was marred beyond recognition, bruised. The blood from the wounds of the crown of thorns began to trickle down his face. And I realized those thorns were nothing more than a form of mockery of him to be claiming as the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. Along the way, crowds, some of them grabbed their fistfuls of his beard and began to pull and pluck his hair. Others just hit him. Others spat on him and called him names. Then off in the distance, not far behind, I noticed another man. He looked like he hadn't bathed in a couple of days. His clothes were ragged and torn. I tapped my host on the shoulder and I said, "Who's that man?" He said, "His name is Barabbas." "What's the significance of Barabbas?" I asked my host. And my host said, "He was chosen to be free, while Jesus was chosen to die." And I said, "Well, what did Barabbas do?" And when he began to share with me the details of what Barabbas had been guilty of, I realized his charge was much more serious than the charge of blasphemy that this Jesus was being charged for. I didn't like what I was seeing. And as he began to approach closer and closer, I noticed the wounds on his back, and I asked my host, I said, "What happened to his back?" My host said he was beaten at least 39 times. "With what?" He told me about the whips that the Roman soldiers used. "I came to Jerusalem to celebrate the Passover, not to see a man die, but for some reason on that day, a man had been sentenced to death." Suddenly, Jesus approached closer and closer. I began to look at him, and I looked at the crowd, and it was shouting profanities at him and shouting vulgarities at him, calling him names and continuing to hit him, continuing to spit on him, continuing to grab the fistfuls of hair from his beard, pulling with all of their might, and with pieces of his beard in their hand, they carried it around and held it high like it was a prize. Suddenly he stumbled and fell. The crowd shouted in a war, laughing at him because he was not able to carry his cross. And I didn't know whether to join them or whether to laugh, but I can tell you that inside of me, I started to feel just a bit of sympathy for this man. And suddenly I felt the hand grab me on my arm, pull me out from the crowd, and pointed his fingers at me and said, "You carry his cross." I didn't know what else to do, except I picked up that cross and I placed it on my shoulder. My friends, it weighed over 200 to 300 pounds. It was not an easy task for someone who had not been through what Jesus went through. Soldiers guided the way, and there were soldiers walking behind me, and I looked and I noticed and I saw in his eyes something it's not the eyes of a condemned criminal. It was something different. You see, I saw in the eyes of those crowd that began to shout at him and wanted to see him crucified, that bloodthirsty crowd. I saw anger, rage, and hatred, but I saw something different in the eyes of this man named Jesus. I could hear his labored breathing, groaning every now and then from the pain, from the wounds and the scars on his back and on his head. I carried the cross that Jesus had been carrying. Suddenly I felt a little trickle down my face. I thought it was tears. And I reached up, smeared the tears from the face, and I noticed that it was red. And I realized that it was the blood of Jesus that had been shed on the cross was trickling on my face. The blood was trickling down my clothes, and I was so mad. You see, I came to celebrate the Passover, but now that I had come in contact with the condemned criminal by Jewish law, I was not able to participate in the Passover. In other words, I was disqualified. And there was not even going to be enough time in the day to make me ceremonially clean. I was mad. But I was also embarrassed. I didn't want my friends to see me carrying the cross. I didn't want my friends to see me carrying this instrument of death. I became annoyed. You know how it is when your plans change. This is not what's supposed to happen. This is not what I was supposed to be doing. I was not supposed to come to Jerusalem to carry a cross. I was to come to Jerusalem to celebrate the Passover. But I was also sad. I carried the cross all the way to the top of Golgotha. There were two thieves already there. They were hanging on the cross. I don't know how long they've been there. They look like they've been there for quite a while. When I reached the top of Golgotha, the Roman soldiers ordered me to drop the cross, and I dropped the cross on the ground. I thought my journey was over, but it was just beginning. I watched them as they threw Jesus back on the cross. He grunted as the pain from the splintered cross pierced the wounds on his back. I began to look at the crowd as they continued to get settled in, hundreds and thousands, marching to the top of Golgotha. And as I watched the crowd, I heard the ringing of a hammer that made me cringe with every blow. And I looked, and I saw them nailing him, his left hand to the cross. Roman soldiers were holding his right hand to the cross, and another Roman soldier was holding his foot to the cross. And I watched that Roman soldier with the hammer walk around to his right hand. Then I cringed again. Then I watched that Roman soldier get up and walk to the foot of the cross. I wanted to shout, "Stop! It's enough! He's suffered enough!" But all I'd done was remain silent. And then I heard it again, as they hammered his feet to the cross. And the Roman soldiers worked together, and they lifted the cross up, and he dropped it into a hole that has already been dug. And then when the bottom of the cross hit the bottom of the hole, you can hear Jesus go, "Oh." Then the crowd sat down and they watched him there. It was about 9 o'clock in the morning when this all happened. I looked up and I wondered, why when this man, after endures so much, a tear fell down my cheek, and I saw Roman soldiers standing at the bottom of the cross. They were casting lots for his garments. They were looking for a prize. It was the garments of the condemned criminal that hung above them. I was curious to see who was the one that was going to win that. While I was waiting to see who would win, I heard this voice uttered from the cross. It was not the kind of words you would hear at such a time as this. Because what he said was not something a condemned criminal would say. What he said matched with the look that I saw in his eyes. When he said, Father, forgive them, for they don't know what they're doing. I thought he was talking to those Roman soldiers. So I looked at those Roman soldiers and I looked to see who was winning. Then I looked up and I realized he wasn't looking at the soldiers. He was looking at me. He wasn't just praying forgiveness for the Roman soldiers. He was praying forgiveness for me. Then I realized something else. He was praying for forgiveness for everybody in the crowd. He was praying for forgiveness for the whole world. But Jesus, don't you understand what they've done to you? They had nailed you, they had beaten you, they had pulled your beard, they had called you names, they spat on you, they humiliated you, they tortured you. And then I saw it in his eyes again. The same look I saw when I grabbed the cross. It was a look that explained three simple words. I love you. One of the thieves began to speak up. If you are the Son of God, then come down from the cross, save yourself and us. And the other thief said, you are not in any position to be mocking Jesus because you yourself is hanging on the cross. Then he looked at Jesus and he said, Jesus, remember me this day when you go into your kingdom. Jesus. You see, I watched him do this for 6 hours. For him to breathe, he would actually pull himself up from the cross. So with every word he ever had to utter, he had to pull himself from the cross. Then he would look at that thief and he said, today you will be with me in paradise. How can this man say that? He's getting ready to die. How can he say that today you're going to be with him in paradise? Then there was a brief moment of silence. And I saw in the distance a woman crying. My host was nearby, and I said to my host, I said, who is that woman? And he said, that's his mother. Her eyes were red from the tears that she shed to watch that crowd brutalize her son. Then all of a sudden I heard the voice of that Jesus on the cross, this woman, behold your son. Then I noticed there was another young man standing beside her. His name was John. Then Jesus looked at John and says, behold your mother. Then at 12 o'clock, in a time when the day is usually the brightest, the sky went dark. Then all of a sudden I heard Jesus. could barely see. Eli! Eli! Lama sabachthani, which means, my God, why have you forsaken me? Then Jesus cried, I thirst. Then after a brief moment of silence, I heard him say these words. It is finished. What's finished? Please tell me the ordeal is finally over. Please tell me I don't have to see this anymore. It's finished, but what's finished? Then immediately I heard these words. Father, into your hands I give up the ghost. And then he died. I sat there and watched him. As soon as he died, an earthquake filled the land. I held on to my two boys for dear life. I didn't know what to expect. I was scared. People were running back and forth, and all I could do was hold on to my two boys and realize and ponder everything that I had seen that day. Finally, the sun shone again. And there was Jesus. His body was limp. His head was drooped down. A Roman soldier grabbed a club, stood at the cross of one of the thieves, and broke their legs. Then went to the other thief, broke his leg. Then they came to Jesus. He looked up. He said to the other soldier, he's dead. He's already dead. I don't need to break his legs. He's already dead. The other soldiers said, well, here, take the spear. Let's make sure he's dead. And they thrust that spear up his side. And I saw, as they pulled that spear out, I saw water and blood pour out and spill on the ground. I stood there for quite some time, looking up at the cross of Jesus. And I began to ponder all of the events that I just went through today, and all of the events that I saw, and even the ones that I experienced personally. One by one, the crowd began to return to Jerusalem to begin their Passover festivities. But I could not. I began to ponder this Jesus. And I looked at my hands. Then I realized something. His blood was still on my hands from the time that I had carried his cross. I tried to clean myself off with it, and all I did was smear it even more. Then it dawned on me. His blood is on our hands. I did not carry his cross. I carried mine. He didn't die his death. He died my death. It was not his sins that he was dying for. It was my sins. Then I looked up, and it all began to come together. He was praying forgiveness, not for the soldiers, not for me. He was praying for forgiveness for the entire world. The story that I'm sharing with you that's changing my life can change your life, because at the cross of Jesus, you can find forgiveness. Then I thought about the words he said to that thief. today you will be with me in paradise. And then I just learned something. Not only does you can find forgiveness, but you can also find hope at the cross of Jesus. Then I realized when he said, Eli, Eli, he was talking to his own father. My God, that God himself could no longer look at his own son, because your sins and my sins have been nailed to the cross. I came to Jerusalem to celebrate the Passover, but I left when I found grace. I don't know if you know this, but when you find one of the leaders of the early church, you will actually find my son Rufus. You see, he didn't just change my life. It changed my family's life. I look forward to that day when I can come to Jerusalem and celebrate the Passover, and then I had this unexpected cross that was placed on my shoulder. But I say to you, my friends, that because of that unexpected cross, I got something so much better. Then when Jesus said, "It is finished," this is what he said. That the punishment that's required to pay for the entire sins of the whole world is finished. He made a payment that I could not pay. He paid it on the cross. Can you see how such an experience will shake me to my very core? Imagine if you were in my shoes, forced to carry a 200 to 300 pound cross with the crowd shouting around you. But can you really imagine everything that Jesus went through for you? Do you know what Jesus died from? Literally, a broken heart. That's what sin did. But my friends, my story can also be your story. The same cross that changed my life. The same cross where I was able to find forgiveness. The same cross where I was able to find hope. The same cross where I was able to find salvation. It's the same cross that's available to you today. Why? You remember those eyes that I saw on that condemned criminal? Those were eyes of love. No greater love is any man than this, that a man will lay down his life for his friends. You know what that means? You're his friend. He died for you because he loves you. And he wants you to find forgiveness. He wants you to find hope. And most of all, he wants you to find salvation. That's my story. All because of an unexpected cross. It changed my life. And it changed my family's life. And it can change your life. With every head bowed and every eye closed.